couple of proud Notre Dame grads, joined by yet another on set right now, two-time Super Bowl champion and former pick of the New York Giants, 74th overall in your draft year. Justin Tuck joining us up on set here on Golic and Wingo. Justin, what's going on, man?
Guys. Thanks for having me.
I'll tell you what. So
Go Irish.
Between three,
how about you, Irish?
Between three Notre Dame grads here, there's 2 Super Bowl rings, and Mike, you and I have none.
Yes, exactly. We're not really pulling our weight at the table, though. At least we've got 2 draft picks at the table, so I'll be the odd man out on that one. But happy to have you here for this, Justin, and exciting for you. You get to announce one of the Giants' draft picks for this draft, I understand, right?
Yeah, I'll be announcing the second-round pick tomorrow, so I'm excited about that.
So here's the deal. You're a former Giant. Most of your career, obviously, a great career there. You're going to be announcing it here in Dallas. So 2 things. First, how booed are you expected to be?
I hope it's a lot of boos. That will let me know that I did a lot of things right in Jerry's world.
And as you're being booed, will you try to calm the crowd down by holding your hands up to quiet them while wearing both Super Bowl rings?
I do have both Super Bowl rings in the Dallas area. That might be a play.
All right, we can confirm the presence
awesome.
of both Super Bowl rings. Justin Tuck here with us live in Dallas. And Justin, we've just been talking about them. The New York Giants have maybe the most interesting draft selection and spot with that number 2 overall pick. You're someone who's really familiar with this organization and the way they do business. When you look at this number 2 pick, what does a successful pick look like for the Giants in your eyes?
Man, I'm glad I'm not in Gettleman's shoes tonight. But I think they're in the position that they want to be in as far as in the draft. Obviously, no one wants to be picking at 2 because that means you didn't do what you had to do the season before. But they want to be in a position where one, they can probably get that quarterback to succeed for Eli Manning, but also get someone that at 2. I think they're thinking we want a Pro Bowl player, we want a Hall of Fame player. And I think in this draft they can do that. Whether that's Barkley, whether that's depending on what Cleveland does, if Donald falls back, who knows? But I like where they are, and I'm hoping that this pick ends up changing our fortune.
If they stay away from a quarterback, if they go with a position, it would most likely is going to be Saquon Barkley or the possibility of Bradley Chubb. Now you may be biased here because Chubb is a pass rusher, something you did extremely well. But in your mind, in the NFL of today, that pass rushing specialist type guy or that running back who can be a threat out of the backfield catching the ball, where would you lean as far as where you can get the most benefit?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure how Chubb would fit into the 3-4 scheme. That's the only thing I would have to say about Chubb. Maybe he would be as dominant in that position as he was a 4-3 guy, but I just feel like Saquon is like. There's no such thing as a no miss. You can't miss with a guy. But as when it comes to this draft, and I'm biased when I say this. Obviously, you talked about Notre Dame. I think it's 2 players in the top 10 picks that are kind of a no miss, and that's the guard out of Notre Dame. But I think they could trade back, which Gettleman doesn't do often, or a Saquon. So obviously, if I'm taking that pick, I know who I would go with at 2. But again, Gettleman has a lot of things in the season. Who knows? I'm sure he's getting calls from teams all over the world, all the country, with options to trade back. But we'll see.
2-time Super Bowl champion Justin Tuck joining us, giving us the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. And you mentioned the possibility of a couple of those quarterbacks falling, and I'm interested from a pass rusher's perspective, and this is really both of you guys. When you look at and you analyze the quarterbacks in this draft, who as a defender would you look at and say creates the most headaches for you? You look at and say, this is a guy that would be the most difficult for us defensively to game plan against.
I see the intrigue around Baker Mayfield. One, he's a very accurate quarterback. He has that chip on your shoulder that you want for a guy that's you're going to be taking as possibly your franchise quarterback. I know the knock on him is his height, but you look at guys like Drew Brees and Russell Wilson, who I think Baker is a kind of a mix of both. He's neither one, but a mix of both. He presents some problems because it seems like he's one of those quarterbacks that gets the ball out of his hands pretty quickly. For a pass rusher, I hated that. I don't know. I think from that perspective, I would go with Baker, but he's obviously not as polished or presumably as polished as Donald. So we'll see. But I would go with Baker.
I think it's twofold. I think it's one of the things you mentioned, and I found that in playing against Dan Marino all the time. Now, he was basically stationary in the pocket, but you could hit the greatest pass rusher move in the world, which I rarely did. But occasionally I did, but Marino would get rid of the ball. So it's like you could get the quick pass rush, and they're getting rid of the ball. The other is you get a good pass rush, and then you have a guy with escapability, a Baker Mayfield, a Lamar Jackson, who can not only escape, but then can outrun you. Baker's not going to outrun you, but he can still escape and get out. So those are the two things I think that can be detrimental as a defensive lineman, getting a rush. As far as the Giants, again, are concerned, is there any thought process to you? I think you know where you may be leaning with Saquon Barkley, but to pick that quarterback successor for Eli, who's 37 years old, would that be in your mind at all?
Yeah, I think, obviously I was one of the guys who didn't necessarily like how things ended up for Eli last year, that whole situation. But if you're thinking about the long term, you have to start thinking about his successor. You have to. He's 37. I think he still has some good years, depending upon how the O-line plays, which is another reason why I like Nelson too. But you have to start thinking about it, and I think they are. It just depends on what their draft board. The Giants have really, really been, really keen in trusting their scouts, trusting their draft board, and if that guy that's number one on their draft board is there, depending on who he is, they normally take that guy. So it depends on how they grade these quarterbacks when you compare them to Chubb and Barkley.
Talking to Justin Tuck here live in Dallas from 1010 Collin Event Center. And as far as the Giants, I think bigger picture, this offseason, there's been a lot of conversation around Odell Beckham Jr., one of the best players in the league, certainly one of the best at his position. As a guy who's a veteran presence on a lot of teams, and I'm sure has seen situations like this and had to navigate some, how would you address this in a locker room when you've had a guy who's been so much the subject of conversation? He's shown up for off-season workouts. How do you put your arm around this guy? Do you have a conversation with him behind closed doors? How are you addressing this as a team leader?
I think all of that. I think you definitely you show him how important he is to the team, but also that you show him that he's nothing without the team. No matter who you are, the greatest players that ever played this game, they're nothing without those other 10 guys on the football field. And that's not to say that Odell doesn't know that. He definitely knows that, and I think he acts that way. I think he's such a competitor that in situations where things aren't going good for the team and himself, he kind of allows that to dictate his outward appearance to the masses. But the thing about it, I like about it, is you never heard a teammate say anything negative about him. And the egos and the attitudes of these players today. If the teams didn't like Odell, there would be rhetoric. There would be guys coming out, sources saying all that type. You haven't heard anything about that about Odell. So that lets me know he's a really good teammate. He might be a little immature on some sides, but I think that is because of his competitive nature. I think he's a good kid. I've talked to him often. I think he just wants to win, and sometimes you don't necessarily know how to handle that. And then as time goes on, I hope that the Giants get people around him that have been there, done that can kind of not just talk to him about it, but show him the way. But the talent is like nothing I've ever seen. So I'm hoping that he can figure it out and go on and continue to break records like he's done.
We're talking to Justin Tuck again, a third-round pick back in 2005. So let's go back to that day and what these guys are dealing with. Not so much the first rounders, because they have one night, right? I mean, they're done tonight, especially the guys we're talking about. Well, I know. So neither one of us went in the first round. I went when it was about last call for the bars. That's how late I went in the 10th round. You go in the third round, and so most guys aren't going to be in the first round of this draft. Sure. So talk about your memories of this day.
Yeah, for me, I was coming off a knee injury, so I knew that was going to play a little bit of me slipping. But it was still a great day. It was a great day to have my family around me. It was a transition from obviously going from the University of Notre Dame, and I had the opportunity to go to New York. Didn't necessarily know New York was the team. But like you just said, so many of these guys, you get caught up in the first round. I could sit here all day and talk about Pro Bowlers, Hall of Famers who wasn't drafted late in rounds. And for me, I just use it as a chip. I looked at all the defensive ends that was drafted before me. There was 11, I think. Not that I'm counting.
He says I think he knows.
But it was something that I used throughout my career. I remember walking in the Giants locker room the first day of minicamp, and one of the coaches asked me why I was mad, and I told him why, and he started smiling. And 5, 6 years later down the road, he reminded me of that. And he said the reason why I was smiling is because I knew you was going to use that as fuel to become the best football player you can be. So for all the guys out there that might not go in today or the second round, third, whatever, use that as fuel. Look at all the guys before you and say, I'm going to be a better pro than him. I might not have been a better college player, but who cares? I'm going to be a better pro than that guy.
Can you name all 11?
Yeah.
Give him time, he probably could.
It's only one guy. One guy I'll say he should have went before me. I'll give Dallas some credit here. It's a guy named DeMarcus Ware.
Oh, yeah.
So I think they did
That's
right.
pretty good one there.
Decent pick for them.
I think they did okay with that guy.
Yeah.
All right, we got some Twitter view questions for you coming from the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. And I want to combine this into something I also wanted to ask you about. Clifton asked, excluding Giants coaches, which NFL coach, past or present, would you have loved to play for? And I point this in direction of Oakland, the team you finished up with. When you look at John Gruden back at the helm now, how much does that interest you for a guy that you've seen around football for so long? What would you look at and assess in that situation?
Yeah, what I know of Gruden is that he is going to have that place excited. Yeah, I've talked to Derek Carr, and he just says it's almost like you're in awe of listening to this guy because Gruden is a football mind. I think everybody forgets that because they've seen him, talking on ESPN and so on and so forth. He is a football mind, and so. I think I would love to. I know I would love. I've talked to Charles Wilson about days that they played with him and so on and so forth. I would love to play for him, but my personal guy is also a Raider. It would have been Madden. I would be Madden, Parcells. That would be a toss-up for me for those two guys.
Certainly some good throwback guys there. No doubt about it. Good guys to play for. Anything else you're doing in the area while you're here? Just kind of hanging out?
Yeah, just hanging out. My wife's birthday is today, so happy birthday, Lauren.
Oh, there you go.
You.
Good man.
Smart,
that.
Smart man getting that one.
Thank you for letting me come out tonight.
Yeah.
This morning. So, happy birthday, Lauren.
There you go. Good
Awesome.
job.
Glad we could get that in for you. Score you some brownie points on the home front. We appreciate you stopping by,
Thanks,
man.
man.
Justin Tuck, 2-time Super Bowl champion, going to be announcing the Giants' second-round pick. So be sure to get out there, and if you're a Cowboys fan, boo heartily so he can show off the hardware.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, coming up next.